we go.
What up, guys? Today is September.
So go ahead, Jules.
No, sorry, I'm lagging a little bit. Today's September 9th, 2025. What up, guys? It's the Hoopstorians, Tony and Hoops and myself. So today, September 9th, 1965, Dan Marley was born, multiple-time All-Star and multiple-time All-Defensive player. What do you guys think about when I say Dan Marley and making all defensive teams in such a interesting career?
Why don't you go first, Hoops?
Dan Marley making an all defensive team. But is it like, I don't know if there's controversy around that. It seemed valid to me. Thunder Dan was a great player for Phoenix. He was a great player for Miami. Obviously, he was a big part of that 93 Suns team that won 62 games and made it to the finals. And I think gave Michael Jordan probably his hardest series, where he had to elevate his game to the highest level in order to win. I think probably one of the less talked about, more underappreciated stars of that era.
Yeah, so I think Dan Marley. I'm a fan of Dan Marley's. I go eat at his bar, all that here in the Phoenix area. I think Dan is really good. Dan's biggest problem is he wasn't really a dribbler, which that sucks at the guard position. Extremely athletic guy, strong, could finish with contact, through contact. His three range, his defense was good since he was so athletic. He was able to move his feet, had good size, had good weight, had good muscle mass. Able to keep people, from like just overpowering him. And for those that don't know, watch Game 5 against the Lakers. Dude hits like a 35-foot three-pointer with like 15 seconds left to send it to overtime. I think Dan Marley would be one of those guys that, he would be much better suited for this era. So what's up, Jules? What you got for us?
So today, we are talking about the evolution of defense, and most recently, I think we've all been in these kind of conversations when we have to go and defend these kind of like all-time defenders, and I've been seeing a lot of more, because we're just in the peak of the offseason, all-time defender lists. So, Tony, I'll start with you when we talk about the evolution of defense, because I believe that even in the 50s, I think it always geared towards interior defense. You always try to revolve around a defensive anchor. So when we talk about people of the 50s, where do we kind of start? Because that's even though Bill Russell gets there in the later 50s, there's 7 years almost where there's no Bill Russell, and we'll get to that in a second. But who would you say was kind of like the defensive mind of the president of the 50s pre-Bill Russell? Where we kind of start off?
Well, I think you have to go Mikan to start off with. I think Mikan was the best offensive defensive player. I think there was no bigger gap ever. Somebody that was the best player in the world other than when George Mikan was the best player in the world. I don't think anybody has a bigger gap of all time than that. So I think that is some of the other ones that you have to go with. I haven't really seen much game filling it. Paul Seymour, he had a reputation as a good defender. Then you got to look at like a guy like, and nobody really had this back then, Karl Braun. Karl Braun was a shot blocking guard back in the 50s. So I would say the ability to block shots, especially from the guard position back then too. Harry Gatlin, what is he? He's very switchable. He's always given a lot of effort. He's physical. He's a really good rebounder for a guard too. You got to go. Nat Clifton's another one. In the 50s, I think. Mel Hutchins, I think. He was a really good team defender as well. Those are some of the guys off the top of my head that I'm thinking of in the 50s.
Hoops, what about some he mentioned it, some like perimeter guys? that you could maybe think of that identified some defensive assignments during the time period?
I mean, during the 50s, I'm thinking of guys like Slater Martin, who played with George Mikan with the
Pettit.
Lakers. And he played with Pettit as well. He's a very strong rebounder. Someone brought up Slater Martin today in a live that I was doing, because I was actually talking about George Mikan, and I talked about how he's the most impactful player in the history of the NBA, and how he literally, like, he's the original pace and space revolutionary, because he extended the paint and led to the invention of the shot clock. And so this is a guy I'm thinking of who's a strong rebounder. I compared him to like a Rondo of that era. I mean, it's kind of tough to maybe Jim Pollard also played for the Lakers as well. It is tough to evaluate without the film, but just to sidetrack that a little bit, the problem with the 50s and the 60s, really up until the mid 70s, is that a lot of the counting stats that we have for defense weren't counted. So you lose a lot of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar blocks. You lose obviously all those Russell Chamberlain blocks. There's a decent chance they would have been the all-time leader in those statistical categories. But if you watch the games, and even if you listen to the announcers during that time, they'll even tell you, like with Bill Russell, like, oh, we're avoiding, they're trying to avoid the paint. They don't want to go anywhere near Russell. And then you can see how a guy like Russell, or a great interior defender, is shutting off the paint. George Mikan actually led to the invention of, the conception of goaltending as a rule, because him and Bob Kurland in the 1940s in college would just kind of tap everything out of the rim at the rim. And so guys like Adolph Rupp got pissed off about it and invented goaltending. So the rules were different, but I think during that time too, you see low field goal percentage, you see low pace. Some of that has to do with, the invention of the shot clock, but a lot of that has to do with, it's a lot more physical. I think there's even more fouls called during those times as well. Yeah, those are just a few guys that came off the top of my head.
Well, it's funny you mention the low field goal percentage, because even though we objectively say, and I think it's a known fact that it's the fastest pace in NBA history, we're seeing these like low field goal percentage. So do you think from its infancy, the NBA just immediately geared towards the defenders of the NBA, and geared towards that, even though they're running up and down the court and basically taking shots, but we're seeing impactful guys now getting to somebody like a Bill Russell, and even a Wilt Chamberlain. Do we care about the physicality and what they're bringing towards these other forwards and centers, and even at guards like a Jerry West, how they're impacting this pace? Because if on a surface level, if you're seeing that the pace is so fast, like they should be scoring almost 150 points a game, and that's just obviously not true. So Hoops, would you think that the impact or the start of the NBA was because of the rules geared towards the defenders?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that, and the fact that there's no 3-point line until 79, 80, right? But the sort of spacing of the floor, I think, just in the way the defense was played, like Bill Russell invented rim protection the way it's actually done today. But back then there wasn't defensive 3 seconds, right? Back then there wasn't necessarily illegal defensive schemes. And so the guys like Jerry West and Oscar Robertson, the great scoring guards of that era, what separated them is their unique ability, I think, to consistently hit those mid-range jumpers, because at the time those weren't seen as higher, valuable shots, or shots that were necessarily worth taking. And so I think that's probably the big part of it, is the fact that the game was played mostly in the interior. And so in the half, sure, in the when fast break happens, the fast break doesn't really start until the Celtics, right? Until Red Auerbach. But the fact that sure, they're getting the points off the fast break, but they're also in the half court setting, I think, having a difficult time getting off good shots. And that's what separates the great scoring guards from that era. And as far as the field goal percentage, that's why you got to look at what their relative field goal percentage and true shooting and effective field goal percentage is relative to their era. And if it's, again, you look at those other guys, they're +8, +9, +7. And that's how you can, I think that's how you can gauge the efficiency and how good of an offensive player they were.
Tony.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it was. I mean, if you even look at the invention of basketball, I mean, and the reason why the positions are called the positions, like the forwards originally were the ones that pushed the ball to score, and the guards were back on defense because they used to look at it like shorter players just couldn't score because all of our goal is to get at the rim. So with that mindset where everything is goal is at the rim, then obviously, rim protection is clearly the most valuable. It's still the most valuable aspect of defense, but even more than a premium because now we're not spacing out the floor. And despite what these know-nothing motherfuckers on TikTok want to tell you, the players in the 60s weren't 5'10" white dudes. You put a bunch of guys whose average height is 6'6", and you surround them within 5-10 feet of the basket, and they all stretch out their arms, there's just really no room top. And then we talk about it, too, with the dribbling. You know what I mean? It's harder to dribble. It's harder to get by someone. It's harder to cross someone over. So, obviously, there is going to be a premium on defense because that's what the rule allows. Also, too, I think there is an aspect of, and this is just my personal opinion, but that's kind of, back in the 50s and 60s, that's back when men were men. You know what I mean? And the manly side of basketball is through the defense, through the grit, the grind, on the block, you know what I mean? No finesse ball. You know what I mean? You go in there, you get your points, you get your lunch pail, you go to work. So I think that also added it to it was, like we had the professor on, the mindset back then. That's just how they were. We had Bob Pettit on the show. He said a fight broke out every game when he played.
I mean, that's definitely right. So with, I guess the implication of these now the rim protectors that we're seeing, obviously Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain come to mind immediately because of the athletic frame and what they're able to do to affect a defense. Bill Russell leading all these all-time defenses for the time period, and Wilt Chamberlain just being the athletic freak that he is. Tony, I guess my question is, other than those two guys, who are some other guys, I guess, specifically in the 60s that you could say that they were really good, or they fundamentally were great rim protectors, or even like wing defenders? Because I think the first name that comes to my mind is Nate Thurmond. And even though that he's, having to come off the bench for Wilt during those Warriors years, like, I think he's a very underrated defender when it comes to these all-time talks. And I hear very minimal amount of people talk about him. But who are some other, I guess, lesser known guys that affected or basically implemented in the infancy when we talk about these all-time defenders from the center and wing positions during the time period?
Well, I think you got to go, like, one of the underrated guys is let's see, who would be some of them. Clyde Leveillette, I think that's one of the guys that
took the words right out of my mouth. I was thinking Clyde Leveillette.
Yeah, so
yeah.
Walt Bellamy, especially in his early years, was really athletic as well. And then you got to go guys like, Elvin Hayes came in the late 60s, so I would say he was good as well. And then another guy that, because he spent a lot of time in the ABA too, is short dude too. He's got a weird name. I can't think it's right on the tip of my tongue. Zelmo Beatty. That was another good defender, good rebounder, good role guy. Didn't really have much of an offensive game once you did that, but like he really focused on rebounding and defense and all that. But like I said, he spent a lot of time in the ABA, so a lot of people don't factor him in. But there's some of the guy. Another good, I think Warren Jabali was a really good defender too. I mean, he's a little later in the 70s, but I just don't think people give enough credit for what he was. I mean, that's why he was on the floor. But there's a couple off the top of my head.
That's fair.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Clyde Leveillette was the first one that came to mind. Obviously, he was. If you see pictures of Clyde Leveillette too, if you see him, he's 6'9", but he's like a big hulking kind of behemoth of a man. I think Tom Sanders was a very good defender from what I've watched playing for the Celtics. Tom Satch Sanders, obviously Casey Jones, right? And I was going to say the same thing, Walt Bellamy, because we've talked about rebounding and how important that is in defense too, and the ability to end a possession. And Walt Bellamy's giving you 20 rebounds consistently, basically his first few years in the league, like 19, 17, etc. So those are the same guys I was thinking of.
And that's good. But with the athletic, like again, mentioning the athletic frames of Bill and Wilt, with how defenses are during the time period, and Bill elevating those defenses again to all-time level defenses year in and year out. Hoops, we see specifically how he's able to impact team defense, but as these, I guess, the people that we talk to on TikTok that discredit the impact of what he's being able to do, is he one of these people that we could still see today where he's impacting defenses with what is basically being tasked to during the time or during today?
We're talking about Chamberlain or Russell.
Bill Russell.
Oh yeah, I absolutely. Like I've said this before, but he's an Olympic level athlete, Bill Russell. He's an Olympic level athlete who, was qualified for the high jump, third in the U.S., seventh in the world, right? He's got a high defensive IQ, as we've seen. The way he tipped even loose balls, blocks, etc., even rebounds that he can't necessarily get a hold of, he's going to tip the ball to the right guy. You see, even if it's not as box score friendly as we might think in this era. Obviously, he's not going to get 22 rebounds a game. Look at a guy like Draymond Green. We know Draymond Green's an excellent defender, right? But he doesn't really have the box score numbers that show it. But we can see the way Draymond impacts and commands a defense. And you've got Bill Russell, who I think would be a much better version of that because he's much more athletic and I think has a much higher IQ, and also will get into fewer fights. So yeah, I think he's in terms of portability or translation or whatever, I think he would do fine. I think he would do fine because you can see it in the film too. What was I watching this morning? Actually, I was watching 1966 Game 5 Royals and the Celtics, right? And this is the closeout game, so everybody's playing their hardest, right? Oscar Robertson, the first play of the half, tries to go up to get a layup, and Bill Russell jumps so fucking high and just swats it out of the air with ease. And you see other guys that will have the ball at the foul line. They'll have the ball at the foul line around the key. They'll turn around to try to make a roof. Bill Russell's coming right up. Right, and they just immediately shuts that lane off, shuts that release valve off for them. So I think with his IQ, his athleticism, and his mentality, I think we know his ability to be probably the greatest leader we've ever seen in the history of the NBA. I think he'd be an excellent defender today. Sure.
And Tony, before you answer on that, watching some film on my end, I'm seeing Bill Russell basically be able to, one of the first guys who are at his size is being able to switch and hard hedge during the time period. So can you please describe to our friendly TikTok audience how he's being able to be one of the first guys to come out onto the quote unquote 3-point line or onto guards and basically be able to shut these guards down for a short period of time?
I mean, what he did to Jerry West in the 60s should be a criminal charge. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he and Jerry West put up great numbers, but you would never know that, like watching that. There is a game in 63, because that's the most recent one I watched, Game 6, 63 finals. There's these plays where, like, I don't know, I think it's like 4 times in the second quarter he blocks Jerry West's shot. And there's 2 times where he's in the paint, and next thing you know, he jumps so quick, and he's out on Jerry West's jump shot so quick to block it. And I want to ask you guys this, because I think this adds to it. He's so, how can I put this? His fluidity, you know what I mean? He's so agile and move for his size. He's 6'9.5", but his wingspan is like what, 7'4", something like that. So I mean, he's just so long and he jumps so high and he's just an athlete. That's like I mean, he's even said in interviews, I was one of the best athletes in the world. You know what I mean? Any sport, pick a sport, run, jump, straight. I'm one. And that's what I was going to throw it back to you guys because I'm curious about this. Wilt and Bill Russell are both Olympic level athletes in other sports. Do we have anybody since then that can say that?
No, in fact, Wilt Chamberlain's a Hall of Famer in another sport, right? Volleyball. I don't think we can say Olympic level athletes in other sports. To my recollection, I don't think there.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody that has that that, I mean, there certainly could be somebody who could qualify in certain things, but to be those guys, to be Bill Russell and be an Olympic level high jumper and literally say, I'm not doing the Olympics, I'm going to play basketball. And for Wilt Chamberlain to have a Hall of Fame volleyball career after his playing career, no, I don't think there's anybody like that.
Yeah, to mention shortly for a different sport, I know it's somewhat unrelated. The Tyreek Hill Olympic trials a couple years ago, that he was trying to be on the Olympic team for I think the 4x1, the 100, the 200, and he's putting up decent times, but he's coming in like 6th in these Olympic trial runs. So like we know that Tyreek Hill for the football side of things is quote unquote the fastest guy, but he's coming in 6th when it comes to Olympic level athletes. So like I think for the quality of athlete when it comes to trying to be multi-sport and worldwide global is fallen off for the amount of, I guess, people who can do multiple things. So I hold incredible weight when it comes to people who are both being able to be a Olympic level athlete in one sport and the other, and be a Hall of Famer in a completely different sport post career. So I would say I don't think so. And if there is, that's something that I would have to take a deep dive in. But to move.
Can I ask you a question? Wait. On that side note, on the Tyreek example, did you see about 10 years ago? Do we all remember how fast John Wall was?
Yeah.
He raced an Olympic level sprinter, and the guy didn't even look like he was trying, and smoked him. And I'm sure you can like find the John Wall versus Olympic level sprinter. But I mean, it actually shows you the difference.
Yes, and it's ironic because not to get down this rabbit hole. I hate when some of these athletes try to say I'm like faster or I'm more physically gifted than you are in the sport that you are making your living off of. And when they go and try, they just get completely embarrassed because the physical gifts are there, but these guys physically train 12 months out of the year to compete against other people at their level globally. So if you think you can do it as a side hustle, you've embarrassed yourself. To move on, because I think we all understand the Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain like impact, even though we didn't mention or we didn't talk about Wilt, but we know that he's a freak level athlete, and that's nothing to be said. The 70s specifically, I think is a interesting decade when we talk about defense. We talked about the physicality and stuff, and yes, Kareem is probably the best two-way guy during the time period. But when I'm going back and doing my deep dives, I'm loving what I'm seeing from the guard position, specifically from Walt Frazier. I know that he's an all-time point guard. When we talk about these lists, or when people make their lists, but let's see Walt Frazier being able to basically manhandle some of these guards who have kind of shorter frames to hoops. When it comes to the 70s, where does this kind of, I guess, the physicality kind of come in? Because I do think, even though it might be the quote unquote worst era of basketball because of 2 leagues and all this kind of stuff, I do see these NBA players still try to put up a good fight. But I do think the defense is still pretty stout during the time period for that whole decade, regardless of having 2 leagues or not.
Yeah, I think it's just harping back to what Tony said. People play a lot more physical. It's a different era, different attitude towards how you play the game. And I think, again, it's the same thing. I think it's also the way that people have to score back then, without a 3-point line, without any real spacing. A lot of your opportunity to score is going to be in the interior of the floor, from the shorter mid range to the key, and obviously that's where the game gets most physical. You were saying the game isn't as physical now, but the game's mostly played around the arc, and so there isn't really a lot of opportunity to be the most physical. Look at the Golden State Warriors, for example, right? They're consistently throughout and they've been contenders for about a decade now, but they're consistently one of the lowest free throw shooting teams in the league. And what is that? And they have so much success. What does that tell you? They're not getting to the rim, and it doesn't really matter because that's where the game is played. When the game is played closer in, obviously it's going to be more physical because that's where the game gets more physical. And that's where the whistles get a bit more scarce, I think, is the further you go in the paint.
Tony, because I actually talked to when I first started to do creation, talked to Chilltown about this for a short period of time. When you talked about, ironically, the free throws. So like when I asked him and I quizzed him, Tony, you might know this. Out of any NBA MVP ever, who has the lowest amount of free throw attempts per 82 games during their MVP season? Is that something that you would know?
Is it Unseld?
It's not Unseld.
Unseld's a good guess.
I would have guessed Unseld. Is it Curry?
He's close. I think he's
Steve Nash.
He's third.
Boy,
it's Dave Cowens.
Dave Cowens. Wow.
And that's why I was kind of framing it, because obviously he wins the MVP in the 70s and it's a physical era. But Dave Cowens during his MVP season is, I get to the line a little less than 3 times a game, or per 82 games. Or like I think his free throw attempts are definitely up there. But it was something interesting that I noted. So when it comes to like the physicality and stuff like that, I don't like. I think Dave Cowens is an all right defender, but when I think about these big men in the 70s, I think of like Artis Gilmore and Willis Reed almost immediately. So and obviously I mentioned Kareem. So Tony, when it comes to rim protection during the 70s era, where does it change in how people are playing defensively, or is that the same kind of impact mindset of rim deterrence and getting creating fast break opportunities from blocking shots? Is that still a thing?
Well, so humans love recognition for their accomplishment. They love it, as a matter of fact, so much for the fact they will just make up accomplishments just to get recognition, even though they didn't do shit. Kind of like, the savior of Lemoyne or whomever. But what that's being said is, so yes, I do think rim protection got at a more premium once they introduced the stat, because you're saying, oh, now I'm going to do all this and I'm going to get recognized for it. Absolutely. And when we talk about rim protection, to me, I think the best rim protectors Wilt, obviously, of the 70s for the 4 years he's there. And then after that, I think you could argue Kareem's second. I wouldn't say he's second because at his peak. At their peaks, I would say these two guys are higher. And I think that's Elmore Smith and Walton. I think they're better rim protectors at their peak. Their problem is, Walton doesn't last very long. And, by the end of the 70s, Elmore Smith is petering out. But, we don't even get the first 3 years of what Elmore Smith can do. If you look at that run that he had in like October of 73, where he's averaging like 12 blocks a game or 10 blocks, I forget what the number is, some crazy number, over multiple games. You know what I mean? Like over multiple games. So when we're talking rim protection, we just don't get – shout out to Elmore. He's been supposed to be on the show for a while. He's got a book coming out. He's waiting until that gets done. But, yeah, I think Elmore is like one of the lost rim protectors of all time. I think Caldwell Jones was a good rim protector too, while we're on the subject.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said that. For the 70s, I think it's underrated when it comes to defense, but the 80s,
the depth of the center position. Do you know there are 16 guys that played center in the 70s that are in the Hall of Fame?
When I talk to people, because not to sidetrack, everybody says the 1990s is the decade of the centers. I argue the 1970s because of the Hall of Famers. Absolutely.
You got Bob Matthews. Bob Matthews winning 3 straight scoring titles, right? At the beginning of the decade, winning MVP, an underrated center peak of all time. I just wanted a funny stat about the Elmore Smith, who, for people who don't know, most blocks in a game with 17. But
makes really good barbecue sauce.
It's funny. So Elmore Smith set the record for most blocks averaged in a season, right? And then it was broken by Mark Eaton, who had Elmore Smith was like 5 blocks a game. Then Mark Eaton was 5.6, right? And since then, those are the only 2 guys that ever set the record for most blocks in a season. It's never been broken since.
Oh,
That's
cool.
an
So there's only
interesting
two
stat.
people that would help hold the official record.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But getting back to the
The
80s.
70s game. Well, wait a minute. I had a question. I mean, Hoops, are we in agreement that 70s is the best decade for the center?
I think so. Because when we talk about the 90s, for example, your mind goes to just basically goes to a few guys who are probably high. I mean, ranked higher all time than a lot of other guys. It's Shaq, Ewing, Hakeem,
Robinson, Mourning, and Mutombo.
Oh, Mutombo's the
And
other.
then you got and Dougherty's good too, but he's not Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Brad Dougherty's
Right.
he's fine. Number 1 overall pick. I don't know if he really ended up reaching quite that level of production. I guess he did, but not consistently. But when you look at the 70s, you've got Kareem, Wilt, Bill Walton, Dave Cowens, Wes Unseld, right? I'm naming a bunch of just naming a bunch of MVPs right off the bat. And then you've got
Chamberlain.
Yeah, I said Will. Then you've got Bob McAdoo, Artis Gilmore, right?
Moses Malone,
who comes in later. I mean, he's there in the ABA and comes in.
I mean, he's an MVP in the 70s.
He is. He's an MVP in 79. That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Robert Parrish. We can count Robert Parrish. Came in 76 for the Golden State Warriors, right? So just off the top of our head, we're already 8 deep in Hall of Famers that played in the 70s. So I agree. In terms of the depth of the position, you could say the higher.
I mean, even name Lanier. Lanier is one of the best centers of the 70s.
Yeah.
Love Bob Lanier.
Yeah.
So if anybody's watching, I'm with that. Let's please start saying the 70s is the best era. I personally think the 60s is deeper than the 90s. Like people don't even name Willis Reed in the 60s.
Yeah. Willis Reed, Nate Thurman, Walt Bellamy. Say Clyde.
Wilt Russell, Unseld Hayes.
Yeah. Yeah, if we're counting Hayes as a center, I guess you should.
Well, I mean, he was a center. He was a center the whole time he was in Houston. He only moved to power forward when he went to Washington.
Because he was playing with Unseld. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So there we go. We've cleared it up.
And I'm in agreement 100%. I'm sorry. Again, I'm lagging a little bit, but for the 80s, when it comes to this, because you guys know that you mentioned the specific name that I mentioned in my video with Larry Bird, is that when it comes to then wing defenders specifically in the 80s, I think that starts to become very. When we talk about depth, I think there's decent depth there because Bobby Jones and Carl Jones.
Can we shout out a couple 70s wing defenders because we haven't shouted these guys out yet. Havlicek needs a nod. Yeah, Havlicek needs a nod. You know what I mean? I'm a huge Dandridge guy. I love Bobby Dandridge's D and all that. And then that's just the two I just want to make sure that we get in the mail. I don't know if Hoops wants to shout out any other two.
No, I think you covered it.
All right,
yeah,
cool.
and that's
continue on with the 80s, please.
Well, we can count
Bobby. No, for sure.
We can actually count Bobby Jones in the 70s as well.
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that.
Oh, Bobby Jones. I totally forgot about Bobby Jones. Yes.
Yeah, you can count him in the 70s as well.
And that's fine. I mostly think about him in the 80s, but obviously he's making what 10 all defensive teams over a cumulative of separate years, which is absurd.
Even Norm Van Leer, right? He's like a big. Yeah. He's a good defender, big triple double guy in the early 70s too. Just throw a name out there.
But I think when it comes to like the wing defender position, in the 80s, I think that's a rather solid position because I think we're now getting into, now that the 3-point line is being indicated, we're seeing, even though it's not taking, we're not taking many threes, it's so now we're starting to spread out just a little bit more. So I think wing defenders are now being valued a little bit higher than rim protection. Obviously, Kareem is still here in the 80s. But and please feel free. Like I can't name like a lot of these rim protectors in the 80s. I think there's way better guard and wing defenders during the time period because of the value of the jump shot.
Yeah, I think Manu Bol comes to mind, obviously. We're
Well, I
talking.
mean, you already named Eaton as well.
Yeah, I already named Eaton as well, so it's kind
But
of
then, but see, a lot of people forget about this guy. Well, I was gonna say a lot of people forget about this guy, but Tree Rollins. Tree Rollins was an amazing. Tree Rollins was an amazing rim
maybe
protector.
Buck
Go ahead.
Williams. I mean,
Who?
Buck Williams, but he was more of a power forward.
No, well, Buck Williams wasn't really a rim protector. He
Yeah, he
was more
wasn't
of a
really a rim
rebounder.
protector. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
Right.
we're doing that too. But I mean, like, there's guys like, what was it? Wayne Cooper averages 2 blocks a game for his career. He plays like 23 minutes a game. So Wayne Cooper would be up there. I think Alton Lister, I mean, he's more famous for getting dunked on, but the Lister Blister, he's another guy, a lot of blocks in a short amount of time. Another guy that guarded the wing and guarded the post, tremendous shot blocker, really good defender. I think he gets credit for what it is. We're talking Larry Nance. We got to talk Larry Nance. You know what I mean? Larry Nance was another tremendous shot blocker and all that. I mostly remember him as he's old and all that. Like, same thing Tree Rollins, for me watching. But Herb Williams was blocking shots, with Indiana, in the 80s as well. There's another guy. I'm trying to think of who else is there. And those are really kind of the guys that are. Kevin McHale. Kevin McHale had some years where he was a really good shot blocker as well.
Yeah.
So that would be my rim protectors, and then I don't know if we want to go to perimeter yet, but you guys got anybody else?
I think we covered it.
I think we covered it, and that was kind of what I was trying to point, because I think it's a little bit of a deeper dive when it comes to rim protection, because it's not really like they're names, but I don't think they're necessarily well-known names. But I do think, like I mentioned before, I think the perimeter defense during that time period is a little bit underrated, because it's it's a high pace and a lot of people are scoring a lot of points. But I think that valuability starts to come in, even though it might not be necessarily shown in some final scores, but it might be shown in some box scores and stuff like that. But what are some wing defenders during the time period that we think that should be recognized during the 80s?
Maybe like Paul Pressey.
I love him.
Yeah, Paul Pressey played for those Bucks teams with Sidney Moncrief, obviously a much more well-known wing defender. Rodney McRae for the Rockets is another one.
Yeah.
Bobby Jones, again, trained, across eras, obviously part of the finals team in the 70s and then the championship team in the early 80s. Obviously Alvin Robertson, who's a depoy. Dennis Johnson's another one, but I think a lot of people know who Dennis Johnson is. So those are a few that just come to mind.
Obviously Andrew Toney.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say I think Tony Moore is a scorer, but then I mean, we gotta go Michael Ray Richardson. If cocaine hadn't gotten in the way, he might be the all-time steals leader. That dude, we don't talk enough about that dude. You want to do a deep dive, Jules? Game film? That dude was fucking awesome. That is.
Oh, I love Michael Ray Richardson. Him and
Ray Richardson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, him and Otis Birdsong are one of my favorite backcourt duos.
All-time great name too.
Right.
Agreed.
Then we got to go. And this guy, I think this guy was a good defender. I mean, he didn't get the credit like in terms of defense, teams and accolades on. But Clyde Drexler was a good perimeter defender. He was a good passing lane, could rip you off the pick. We got to go. Guy who held the record till Stockton broke it, Mo Cheeks. Mo Cheeks led. Yeah,
Yep.
He led the NBA in steals for what was it? However many years that was. I don't know when he set the record or whatever. Another guy too, triple double guy that a lot of people really don't talk about, and I think you need to do a deep dive on him, get us some film on him. Fat Lever was another guy that was was stealing and all that as well. So those are some of the guys that I think we forget about. Like Alvin Robertson to me is the best perimeter defender of all time. I would take his perimeter defense over anybody else's.
What about
little fucker too?
What's TR Dunn? That's his name, right? On the Bucks. What's his name? TR Dunn.
TR Dunn. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was really underrated defensively for the those Bucks teams.
No, Dunn was too. Hey, just like on 71, I don't think he gets nearly enough credit. Merv Winkler could steal the ball like a motherfucker. He just couldn't stop fouling everybody and couldn't stay out of foul trouble. That's why he rarely played. But Merv Winkler was a ball hawk like a motherfucker. I agree with that. But yeah, so I mean, I think some of the guys that people really forget about, like I said, is Michael Ray Richardson and Mo Cheeks and Fat Lever. I think those are the guys that are really really forgotten about in the 80s. And like I said, Alvin Robertson is the type, and you can watch the video. He's the type to get punched in the face from Shaq and then just get pissed off and try to punch him even harder. Like he ate that Shaq punch. He ate it and didn't give a shit.
Yeah. So so now that we've established that it's a jump shooting league, and
we didn't name
even
Stockton.
We didn't name
Stockton
or Gary Payton, I guess you could name.
Well, Gary Payton didn't get there till 90.
Was he 90?
Yeah,
I thought he was 88. Okay, 90.
No, 90 is the year.
All right. But speaking of the I guess well known 90s guys, to swiftly move on to the 90s, now that the jump shot is basically established in the league, there are, and we talked about it a little bit earlier about the 90s centers. Yet we have a whole bunch of, really, really good rim protectors during the time period. And we're seeing this kind of change where I think the physicality during the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, where I talked to some of the older folk, I think is just way blatantly overblown. You guys specifically heard me say it before. If you go look up the 1991 Denver Nuggets, they're losing, 172 to 168. And so during the time period, I still think it's somewhat of a transition from this very high pace and then slowly moving down as as we're starting to get closer to the quote unquote dead ball era. So Tony, for the evolution of defense during this, for the early 90s specifically, where do you think these, I guess, coaches start to try to impact defense and effectively try to make this step forward into, I guess, modern day rim protection or modern day thoughts and processes of how defenses are made by personnel and stuff like that from, like I said, from 90 to 94? Because I really think there's a big difference between the first half and the second half of the decade compared to every other decade prior.
Well, I think what it is we start seeing it, and by 94, 95, we're really seeing it. But you want to end at 94 is the closeout of the three. Because that's the first time we're seeing teams getting their identity as a three-point shooting team. In the 80s, there was no three-point shooting team. They might have shot the threes, but then you had guys like the Sonics were considered three-point shooting teams. The Pacers were considered it, even though it was really just Reggie. It wasn't a whole bunch of people doing it. And then the Suns were considered a three-point shooting team as well. So that's what I think the biggest difference is the closeout of the three. We saw Dan Marley, I want to say 94, not it was 93, but I think it was 94. He set the record for most threes with 192 in a season. So it's the first time we're getting up around 200 made threes in a season. So if the dude's making, 200 threes over the 82 course of the game, that's 2.439 times that. We'll just say 2.5 for the sake of argument. We'll do 2.4. That's 7.2 points we're giving up, right? Well, seven points is a massive swing, in terms of, if you're a +7, you're probably one of the best teams in the league. You're probably not championship level, but you're, upper echelon. And if you're -7, you're probably one of the worst teams. So, and then you factor in, that's just one player. That's one player that's giving us 7 points from three. And then now we got all that. Now we're getting, guys giving us 20, 30, we're getting all this, we're getting more point production from three. And that's what I really noticed is the closeout of the three. We got to be more selective where we double. We can't double off shooters now. We have to double off weaker shooters. We got to mix and match our doubles. We got to come from the weak side. We got to disguise the double. On when they're cutting through the lane, do we break off the cut and do we attack the double? You know what I mean? And commit to that, or do we follow the cutter through the lane? What are we doing now with that? Yeah, and who is our personnel? Because back in the day it was double off anybody, it's still going to be the same two, and then the 3-point shot wasn't there. But that's really what I would say the biggest difference is the closeout on the three. That's when that I really started noticing that 92, 93, 93, 94, somewhere in there.
I think you're also seeing the emergence of 3-point specialists like Steve Kerr and Tim Legler, right? And so that's becoming, like you said, more part of the identity. But there's not really any, I think that's the first era where you start seeing people really shoot. There's a select few guys, like I said, Kerr and Legler, that are shooting 50% from the three, right? And so that actually becomes a regular part of the game plan. it's actually kind of, when we think about how good of a shooter Larry Bird was too, it's kind of incredible to watch how much of the games played inside the arc, and even in the 90s, it still played inside the arc. Like I saw Jeff, I watched the 97 finals, saw Jeff Hornacek catch the ball at the arc, a good shooter, catch the ball at the arc, take a step in, shoot a mid range, but still there's still the emergence of those guys who can hit threes at least 40-50% clip regularly and are leading the league in 3-point percentage, and that's part of the team's offensive game plan now, night by night. And so of course it becomes more, you have to have better perimeter defenders in order to combat that. And that's why, how we've gotten here, with the 3-and-D sort of revolution that's going on.
Hey, can I add on to the Jeff Hornacek thing? What's funny about that is, so his coach was Cotton Fitzsimmons, and Cotton Fitzsimmons used to regularly preach on Suns broadcast that he doesn't like threes, take a step inside, get a foot closer, and get that higher percentage shot. So that might have stuck with Jeff Hornacek, because Cotton Fitzsimmons retired with 832 wins, multiple coaches of the year, and top 10 wins when he retired. So, I mean, he knew how to coach the game, and that was the mindset back then.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So like I said, I think this, I specifically, watching these games, I specifically see this change from 93, 94 to 95, 96, where I think there's defenses that are being completely shifted to what some personnels are, by specifically what I'm seeing defenses are, like most notably the Chicago Bulls. And they go and get perimeter defenders to go and help, Jordan when he comes back. Scotty is still, good, at least decent defensively. They get a good rebounder in Rodman, everybody knows. But, I think Ron Harper is a very underrated defender when he starts, to, go and guard these guard defenders. And I think a lot of other teams have very stout perimeter defenders when it comes to these good defenses. And again, we mentioned the really good rim protectors that have the valuability there, but I think the cherry on top is getting some really good perimeter defenders that can at least affect jump shooters and affect them getting to their spots, because I'm really starting to value off-ball defense a lot when it comes to perimeter defenders, and I'm starting to value this because of this era of this time period, these 5 to 8 years of what I'm starting to see. So what are some of these guys that are being able to hinder these jump shooters, when we now see that this evolution is we're seeing these guys start to shoot at least a decent amount of threes or long twos?
Well, I was going to say, what happened between 93, 94 to 94, 95, right?
What happened, Tony?
Shortened 3-point line.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That was the first year. So the 3 years. So when we started seeing guys like Alonzo Mourning being able to start banging in threes, and actually I think that's when the NBA said, fuck this, we got to move this shit back, because this is ridiculous looking now. Yeah, I think that's what it is, because now, like he was just saying, it's way more of a game plan. When we saw Kerr and Legler set those records in 3-point shooting, those were on the shortened 3-point line. So now, because generally speaking, throughout the history of basketball, people have pretty much operated 22 feet, a little outside the top of the key, and that's pretty much where people are. So now you got to factor in, well, we got guys that can shoot 40, 50%. Shaq's leading the league in field goal percentage. He's only shooting 58. He's shooting 58 at twos. We're shooting 40s at threes. That's worth a 60% at two. So I think that's where that comes into as well. And then we want to talk about right 94, 95 rookie year comes right out. And this motherfucker is, and I'm going to say this because I know people love him on that. I don't think there was a year in the league that Kobe was ever a better defender than Jason Kidd. So Jason Kidd came in right at the perfect fucking time. 94, 95 rookie year, most athletic in terms of speed, agility, things like that, bounce. And I mean, that dude took off he's averaging 38% from the field. He's still getting a rookie of the year. He's still Grant Hill, is averaging 20. He's an all-star. He's sharing kids only 11 points a game. But it's just watching that dude play. How fast he pushed it and how hard he worked on it. I mean, that dude's switchability on the perimeter. He could take 1 through 3. I mean, he's got such long arms. He's got great IQ, anticipation. He's playing lanes. He's ripping you, picking you. He only needs a finger on it, too. That's another thing. He just needs to get his finger on it, and it's gone. So I think someone like that, I don't think we get nearly enough credit for how good defensively Jason Kidd is.
Well, to that point, he elevates the net. I mean, we don't see many perimeter defenders elevate defenses, right? It doesn't really happen, a singular perimeter defender. And Jason Kidd elevates the Nets from a bottom-tier defense to the number 1 defense in the league just through that trade from the Suns in 2002. 2001 to 2002. So, yeah, Jason, I mean, we saw that too in Jason Kidd's later years when he's 37, 38, when he's for stretches playing defense on Kevin Durant, on LeBron James, on Kobe Bryant, and giving them a hard time. He had the instincts. He had a body advantage too, even for being 6'4". He just had like a weight and a strength to him that a lot of players in the combination of agility and speed that a lot of players at his position, maybe no players at his position in his frame had.
Yeah. To move on to the 2000s.
Hey, we're gonna have to pick up 2000s because we're running out of time, and we only got about 2 minutes left, so we're gonna have to extend it to next time. But I do want to say this on the 90s because I think on ball, just strictly on ball defense, pressuring the ball. Well, shout out to Lindsey Hunter. I think Lindsey Hunter's up there. We don't ever give him enough credit, but Mookie Blaylock. I don't think I'd rather have anybody with on-ball pressure more than Mookie Blaylock. Right. I don't know you, Jules. I know you're the youngest one of the group. Have you done a lot of Mookie Blaylock deep dives?
I haven't. I know the name and I know the career, but that's somebody that is actually on my list.
Do you know the DUIs and he's sitting in prison now because he couldn't get his shit straight? So he was one of the best thieves ever, and then it didn't translate, to off the court.
I was going to say it doesn't sound like he translated at all. So now I know.
No, but what I'm saying is, Jules, the whole point is you probably get his prison info, give him a write, give him a letter, get on his Securus account. You guys start doing some chat. Maybe we can get him on the show. I'm putting you on that, okay? You just got to find out where he's at. Write to the man. Tell him we want him on the show. Tell him we love his on-ball pressure. Tell him you don't even know who the fuck he is. You know the name but not the game, and you've heard about his on-ball pressure. And you're dying to talk to him.
Sounds like a fucking plan.
It sounds like a plan. But, yo, we're out of time. So, Jules, kick us out.
I'm sorry. We'll see y'all next week.
Thinking about Mookie.
Yeah, that got me fucked up, Tony. All right. See y'all next week. We hope you guys have a horrible week, but come back next week. Maybe a better week comes out. But for everybody who's watching, it's me, Jules, Hoops, and Tony. We'll see y'all next week.
And we're out, y'all.
Oh, Canada. Put on a suit, drink water, don't drink and drive. Hey, man, call your mother.
It means nothing. It means nothing.
Nah, they lying to you. It's about the money.
Now you're more fluent.